The idea that 80% of our stuff is Hey folks, it's Carrie from Pretty Neat. Thanks for joining me. If you're new here to my channel, welcome. I share videos here every week about organizing and decluttering your home and adopting a minimalist mindset, so I hope you'll hit the subscribe button and stick around. Today, I'd like to talk about something called the 80-20 rule. This is also known as Pareto's principle. Pareto was an economist in Italy a long time ago. He noticed that 80% of the wealth in Italy was owned by 20% of the population. And he thought this was interesting. He looked at other countries and found that that distribution was similar in other places as well. This principle originated in the area of economics, but it has been applied now to lots of different fields and areas of study. So the basics of this principle are that 80% of outcomes are attributed to only 20% of causes. And this idea has been talked about in the minimalism and in the organizing world, with the idea that 20% of our stuff is getting used 80% of the time. So you can think about this in terms of your wardrobe, and that 20% of your clothes are getting worn 80% of the time. And you can apply this to other areas of your home and other areas of items as well. So this is an intriguing idea, but just anecdotally, this feels true to me, and most of the people that I work with and that I talk to about this would agree. The majority of the stuff in their homes is most of the time just sitting there, and it's just this small percentage of stuff that is really getting used over and over and over again. Personally, when I think about cosmetics and other skincare and hair care products, I definitely have a collection of that stuff, but I have my few favorites that I reach for over and over and over again. I also created a binder of recipes a while ago, and while I included a lot of different recipes in there, most weeks I'm pulling the same handful of recipes and making them on repeat. So what are the implications here when it comes to our homes and the things that we own with the 80-20 rule? Well, the suggestion here is that the majority of our stuff really isn't getting used, and that we could pare down dramatically and it would not have much of an impact on our day-to-day living. If we're only wearing 20% of our clothes 80% of the time, we could easily get rid of a large percentage of the clothes that we own, and we wouldn't miss them as long as we kept that 20% that we wear almost all the time. This also reminds me of some posts that I have seen by the LA Minimalist. She has an Instagram account that I love. I get a lot of value from her content. I'll be sure to link it down below. But she has made a few posts where, for example, she has shown a picture of 5 shirts. And she said, of these 5 shirts, I really only wear 2 of them. So if I get rid of the 3 that I never wear, I'm really not losing anything. By getting rid of the stuff that isn't getting worn, we're actually making our lives easier. And the LA Minimalist says, you know, I only keep the clothes that I wear all the time. So then it's very easy for me to get dressed because I have only kept my favorites. And it's this idea that we're streamlining our space so that we are just left with the things that are really useful and that really serve us at this point in time. We don't have to dig through a bunch of stuff that we're not using every time we need to do an activity. So every time we get dressed in the morning, we don't have to rifle through 20 shirts that we don't wear to find those 2 that we do wear all the time. an example of how I put this into practice, very recently, I did a big declutter of all of my accessories. I looked at my jewelry and my clothes and my scarves and my winter gloves and all of that stuff, and I pared down quite a bit of it. I actually created a video about that whole process. I'll link that one down below as well. But one of the things that I ended up paring down were my shoes. I have found that this has really been helpful for me. I was holding on to some shoes that I just really never wore, but every time I got dressed, I would consider those shoes that I never picked. I would look at them and have this little voice in my mind saying, you haven't worn those in a really long time. Why don't you wear those? But then that same voice was like, no, I don't really like those. They don't fit right, or they kind of hurt my feet or whatever. I would not choose them because I never choose those shoes. But there was that additional process of considering them and making the decision to not wear them. When I did the declutter of my shoes, I just got rid of those shoes that I never chose. What I have found is that it really is easier to get dressed. I don't have that little internal dialogue every time about the shoes that I'm not wearing because they're just not there anymore. This has not made any negative impact in my life. I have fewer shoes, but I wasn't wearing those ones that I never chose. And so they were really just taking up my space, and they were also taking up some space in my mind every time I had to put on a pair of shoes. So I encourage you to think about this 80-20 rule and how it might be showing up in your home. One collection that I often see in people's homes that's really big are coffee mugs. And I think most of us have the few favorites that we reach for each time. And those are the ones that are in the current rotation. We're just using them and washing them and reusing them. And then there's that like 80% of coffee mugs that pretty much just sit on the shelf. But how much easier would it be if we just had 20% of the mugs that we currently own in the cupboard? We wouldn't really be missing anything because we would only be getting rid of those ones that we don't reach for. Another area where this might be showing up in your life, it certainly does for me, has to do with crafts or hobbies. We tend to accumulate a lot of supplies for our hobbies, but we also tend to just use the same materials over and over. We tend to, again, reach for our favorites. I do paper crafting, and so I use stuff like stickers and washi tape, and I definitely have my favorites and certain color schemes that I just tend to gravitate towards, but I do have a tendency to hang on to a bunch of other stuff that for the most part is just sitting there unused. So how much easier would it be for me to decide on things when I'm doing a project if I really just pared that collection down to my few favorites? I would love for you to comment down below and let me know where you think this 80-20 principle is showing up for you and where you think you could pare some things down and really not miss them. If you liked this video, please hit the like button. It helps my channel out a lot. And don't forget to subscribe. I share new videos here every week about organizing and decluttering your home and adopting a minimalist mindset. Talk to you soon.